Thank you, folks, for joining us on our June 18th call right here in the middle of the month. We're getting close to the longest day of the year. We've got some amazing speakers on tonight to talk about the National Infrastructure Bank and what we're doing to move this policy forward and eventually implement it to change America, kind of back to the future, doing something that we've done in the past. To start off, we're going to start with Alfecu Matardi, former senior economist, International Monetary Fund, who will kind of go through the program for those who haven't heard it. For those of us who have heard it, it's just another way to get this right into the blood. Go on, Alfeca.
Great. Thank you very much, and welcome to everybody this evening. So our theme for this evening's Zoom call is a Franklin Roosevelt policy to uplift America. And we need a little uplifting right now. Everybody is very aware of FDR's famous speech, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." And of course, that all centered around a failing economy. So I'll start out by talking about the economy and then where we are on our legislation. Keep it short. We have a bunch of great speakers. So just recently, this week, the World Bank cut the forecast for our growth of our economy by a full percentage point for this year, down to 1.4%. And they base that on the latest inflation and unemployment numbers, which don't look too bad. But the first quarter contracted, and we have this impending problem of the Trump tariffs, which he said he set ridiculously high. That's his words. And then, of course, they were so high that it caused sell-offs in the markets, stocks, bonds, dollars. And then he followed that up by rolling them back. Somebody needs to mute who just came on. Thanks. He followed that back by rolling them back again. So these tariffs are on again, off again. They'll be passed through to eventually to consumers and will raise consumer prices. They're not showing up in the CPI inflation yet, but they will lower GDP for sure because they are producing a lot of uncertainty in the business community. They don't know if they should invest or not, or they should wait and see. And they're mostly waiting. Businesses are mostly waiting and seeing. Monetary policy, just today, the Federal Reserve decided to keep rates unchanged at around 4.5%. That's because they're not sure about this tariff policy and how much it will add to inflation. And they're also not sure about whether we're going to go into a recession. If we go into a recession and there are clear signs, then they will probably lower the interest rates. On the federal budget side, we are now, with rounding, we are now at a national debt of $37 trillion. The interest on the debt is now running more than defense spending on account of these high interest rates. And annual deficits are still running at 2 trillion every year. So we're adding big time onto the debt. That slows down growth. The Republican Party is fussing around with the budget. One big beautiful budget bill passed the House, and it contains a huge tax cuts for the rich, for about $4 trillion worth of tax cuts for the rich. And it's partly offset by about $1 trillion in spending cuts that are affecting the poor, especially for healthcare, food, housing assistance, education. The latest CBO scoring of the House bill said that it would add 3.4 trillion onto the debt. The bill is now sitting with the Senate, which is also split on how it should be configured. Republicans in blue states are very concerned about Medicaid cuts, which they consider to be political suicide. That's their words. And the Senate is thinking about making those Medicare cuts even bigger. It'll take about 10 to 13 million people off of health care. And then they've also gone back on the House agreement on changes to SALT agreements and that kind of thing. It's not clear that this budget, even now, can pass both houses. And it has to meet a July 4th deadline to pass so that we won't hit the debt ceiling. Two more things that are going to affect the economy, which are not even factored into any of this. The big immigration wave to deport immigrants is going to hugely affect our economy, especially in growing food and service workers and that kind of thing. And then if we slip into another war, international war, well, that'll hype up spending. And if it goes catastrophic, that is a whole nother discussion. So with all of that, the only positive policy out of all of this, the light at the end of the tunnel that FDR talked about, is a national infrastructure bank to reboot the economy. So we're now at in the process of the bill is being inserted back into the House. And we'll then start back on asking all of the local legislators, all of the local activists to recontact their members of Congress to get them back onto this bill. And the way that it will really help the economy is by doubling GDP growth, giving people great paying jobs, fixing all of our infrastructure that is crumbling as we speak. So I'll stop there and turn it over to the other speakers.
Thank you very much, Alfecca. Our first speaker is Representative Dan Cena. Is Dan Cena on the call?
I'm here. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, we'll have you starting just a few seconds earlier. So go ahead and talk to us about National Infrastructure Bank and why you're supporting this.
Well, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here today. I want to thank Stuart Rosenblatt and the team with the National Infrastructure Bank Coalition for organizing this call. My name is Danilo Sena, and I'm the representative for the 37th Middlesex District in Massachusetts legislature. I'm also a proud sponsor of Resolution H3416, urging Congress to pass legislation establishing a national infrastructure bank. I filed this resolution because the infrastructure in Massachusetts, like in our country, is old and is struggling. The harsh winters and really extreme hot summers in New England take a toll on our roads and bridges, utilities, and public transportation. My constituents want to take public transit. They know it's efficient, it's better for the climate. But news of train fires and long delays deter them. Because of the poor infrastructure in Massachusetts, constituents feel they must seek other methods of transit sometimes, and they deserve better. Creating a national infrastructure bank will address these issues, support our communities, and improve our economy at the same time. The bank will create millions of high-paying jobs, help address housing insecurity, and ensure we are prepared for the future. Democrats and Republicans agree that infrastructure is crucial on moving America forward. Bipartisan support for our bill has shown that the movement is beginning on both sides of the aisle. Giving our communities the attention they deserve. The time is now that I urge my colleagues to support this bill. The time is now to build a national infrastructure bank. We need to strengthen our infrastructure, support our communities, and prepare for the future. I want to thank for the time to speak here tonight, and I want to thank you all for attending. I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Cena. I really appreciate you getting on the call. You're the 37th district, so who's in the district, in the Middlesex district?
Yeah, so I represent 6 communities, and they're Acton, Boxborough, Harvard, Ayer, Shirley, and Groton. We have about 160 members in the House of Representatives and 40 senators in the Senate, in the state Senate.
Well, thank you very much for getting on. We really appreciate you working with us, and we know you're going to be key in getting this thing across the finish line. Our next speaker for tonight is Ellen Brown, who's the founder of the Public Banking Institute in Los Angeles. She's an attorney and a very well-known author. Ellen, if you'd like to jump on and present your slides.
All right, while geopolitical and domestic tensions dominate the news, the U.S. infrastructure crisis proceeds apace. Where to find the funding? The US is over $36 trillion in debt, and Congress is gridlocked over the debt ceiling. Alexander Hamilton established the model for the solution. He turned a $44 million Revolutionary War debt into capital for the first bank of the US. State debt was accepted in partial payment for stock in the bank. The bank then leveraged this capital into credit, issued as the first US currency. So there you see our first US dollars. The first national development banks were the first and second US bank. Loans were based on the fractional reserve model of the Bank of England, in which the bank printed and lent many times more banknotes than it had in reserve, which in that case were gold and debt certificates. The difference was that loans were to be directed into internal improvements, which meant infrastructure, and manufacturers. The Bank of the United States was thus a national infrastructure and development bank, and so was the second US bank, which supported the US Industrial Revolution by stabilizing the currency and financing infrastructure. I noticed the Commonwealth Bank of Australia was based on this model. So it really was the first national infrastructure and development bank. And the guy who founded or helped found the Australian bank said that Hamilton was the greatest economist that ever lived. This model was followed in the 1930s when US banks were bankrupt. The Reconstruction Finance Corporation was a federal agency established by President Hoover to save the banks, but it didn't actually work. But it was repurposed by the Roosevelt administration to be an off-budget public credit system. It started with a modest $500 million in capitalization. It wasn't a depository bank, so it didn't take deposits, but it issued bonds, and most of them were bought by the US government. Over the next 25 years, it lent or invested over $40 billion, funded the New Deal, which did a lot of infrastructure, and World War II, and returned a net profit to the government. Here's some of the major funding achievements of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, just during the New Deal, not counting World War II. It invested $400 million to start the Public Works Administration, invested $50 million to capitalize the Tennessee Valley Authority, which provided electricity to the rural South, invested $1 billion to start the Works Progress Administration, providing jobs to millions, and capitalized many other government entities, including the Rural Electrical Administration, the Electric Home and Farm Authority, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, the Farm Credit Administration, the Federal Home Loan Bank Board, the Federal Farm Mortgage Corporation, Federal Housing Administration, the Disaster Loan Corporation, the Commodity Credit Corporation, and Fannie Mae, the original Fannie Mae that was publicly owned. All this was done without raising taxes and without creating consumer price inflation. Why? Because supply increased along with demand. So after the war, post-war prosperity created a US middle class that was the envy of the world. You can see that the middle class went up with the GDP right up until the 1970s when they started, late 1970s when they started to split off. We've done it before and can do it again. Like in the Great Depression, crises are when politicians are open to major changes. We can rebuild the country, restore a middle class, and create a 21st century renaissance with HR 4052, a national infrastructure bank. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ellen. Always super informative. You know, because of you, whenever I used to drive down to see my father-in-law in Georgia, and or in Florida, I go past Jekyll Island, I'd always think of you from your book. This amazing book, The Web of Debt. So folks, you're welcome. Our next speaker is North Carolina Representative Phil Rubin. Phil, I think you're on. Phil is an American attorney and serves in the North Carolina House of Representatives. He graduated with honors from the University of Georgia and from Duke University School of Law, where he was editor-in-chief of Duke Law Journal. He joined the firm of Covington and Burling before his appointment as Assistant United States Attorney in the Eastern District of North Carolina, where he handled constitutional litigation on appeals. So, Representative Rubin, great to have you on tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thrilled to be here and really excited about the work that this group is doing. I'm happy to talk about anything that's helpful, but I just wanted to very briefly say what's going on in North Carolina. I don't think we're going to be able to get it through the legislature this time around, but we do have a resolution urging Congress to endorse a national infrastructure bank. And that was what actually first got me was talking to other legislators about that bill was what first got me interested in and led me to become educated on this. And I've gone from a interested party to someone who believes that this is fundamentally what the nation needs to move forward and have a bright future and something that we can get excited about. And so the other thing I wanted to, and that's by the way, it's House Bill 769 in North Carolina. But the other thing that I wanted to tell you is just in the past couple of days how I've been thinking about the National Infrastructure Bank just in my day-to-day life. One of the major highways that leads from Raleigh in North Carolina up to Wake Forest, which is one of the smaller outlying municipalities, is like kind of unworkable now for a lot of people. It's like twice the commute time it should. And the main thing holding it back is how do you fund that kind of infrastructure improvement? And we're $15 billion behind on roads in North Carolina. $15 billion and we're nowhere near anywhere of getting caught up on that. In fact, we're going in the wrong direction in terms of getting caught up. And likewise, just a little while ago, we also had a big debate about how whether ratepayers should be helping to pay for new power plants for the financing for those power plants before they're built. And sometimes that has led ratepayers to pay for projects that never get built. And I remember thinking during that, like, gosh, if only there was a way to finance this much, much more efficiently, that would actually mean the ratepayers wouldn't have to pay as much and we could get the plant built more cheaply. So, all to say that there are a lot of problems we're facing with the lack of investment in North Carolina, and the National Infrastructure Bank, for me, feels like a way that we can get there. So, I'm just grateful to be here. Thanks for letting me on to talk for a minute. Happy to talk about anything else, but also happy to hand over the mic to others.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Rubin. I'm really glad that you jumped on. Obviously, you and I have a lot of common friends, including Robert Reeves, who's my representative, I just saw the other day. We are hoping to get that passed in the House, but just the push we're making will make the difference. And I say that as a former four-time mayor in our town over here, dealing with growth, dealing with these issues you're talking about, with no pathway to getting things financed without something like an infrastructure bank. Most of them are closed off, and now people are having to raise taxes pretty high. And of course, that's also not a great solution, especially for communities at risk. So we're going to go back to our agenda, and I think it's all right. Well, Mary Alfred, if we could cue you up and you could talk to us about National Infrastructure Bank. Folks, Mary's a member of the Alachua County Commission in Florida. She's a lead sponsor of the NIB resolution at the National Association of Counties meeting in Philadelphia next month in July. She served on the County Environmental Protection Advisory Board, the City of Gainesville Utility Advisory Board, and the County Code of Enforcement Board. She worked for Progress Energy as an environmental specialist and then supervising operations at a power plant. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm just here to also provide an update on the getting this resolution in front of the National Association of Counties. We were able to do that a few years ago, and we're hoping to do it again this year. There seems to be a lot of good momentum and a lot of support across county commissioners. Our county put in a resolution of support for this probably, I guess, 4 years ago. And our it's been fairly popular across our state. All of our regional planning councils supported it, as well as our state regional planning council. So Florida, you know, has unique circumstances with hurricanes and unknown funding going forward with questions about FEMA. So we have lots of work to do in the state to be prepared for climate disruption. And we also have the same problems that you all have discussed already, problems with road upkeep and We need a new jail desperately in our community. We need other infrastructure that is holding us back. And we can only raise taxes so much because people are feeling it in their pockets. And we see national infrastructure banks as the way to go. So back to the National Association of Counties. Yes, we're meeting the second half of July in Philadelphia. I'll be I've presented the resolution to the Transportation Council. They will be the policy group that is going to sponsor it for a policy choice for the entire National Association of Counties. And we're hoping that it will get the support that it needs. And happy to answer any questions about that.
You're ahead of me. I also have to.
Mary, I have a question. In my experience, when I used to serve on bipartisan committees, rural planning organizations that was advising DOT, it always seemed that infrastructure was something you could get, at least on the county and municipal level, people interested and not resist it on ideological grounds. Do you feel, I mean, that's why I really feel it'd be great if it could pass a convention, because hard infrastructure is something everyone always wanted to do.
Yeah, we feel that way, and historically, I think that it's been that way. But I believe that there's been, in recent years, there's been less bipartisan support because, it's either in your camp or it's in my camp, and we've got to get away from that. We've got to move towards. I'm a professional engineer, and in my background as a professional engineer, we don't ask what your political party is. We say what needs to get done and we get it done. And so that is where we need to be as politicians when we're dealing with infrastructure. We've got to stop, calling a bridge or a road or funding for those things. We've got to stop politicizing it and recognize that it's, a health, safety, and welfare need for our citizens, as well as a highly required for the economic success of our country right now.
I completely agree with you. I'm on Tobacco Road, and we have Duke versus Carolina, but sometimes I just tell people I love college basketball. So we love infrastructure. We don't need to hate each other. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Senator Elders, I see that you're on. State Senator Jamie Elders has served as state senator for the Middlesex and Worcester districts since January 2009. You also served as the state representative of the 37th Middlesex District. After being elected as the only clean elections candidate to public office in Massachusetts history in November 2002. That's an accomplishment. Welcome to the call. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I'm in my State House office. Just came from a event down the street in Boston, but yeah, I so appreciate the push on the infrastructure bank, and I met Stu at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and after that began working on a resolution in the Massachusetts legislature to express support, as well as reaching out to the Massachusetts congressional delegation. And I'm sure, like many states, seeing some of the infrastructure money get pulled by the federal government. In Massachusetts, obviously, you got Cape Cod, one of the bridges that is desperately in need to be rebuilt. That funding is uncertain. We have an MBTA transportation system that has approximately $20 billion in infrastructure needs. I do a lot of work on water infrastructure, both drinking water and wastewater, another area where there's, billions of dollars in needs. And we are proud to be a state that really leads on clean energy and climate change, and really need more funding for climate resiliency, for, culverts, for roads, for shelters due to extreme heat. So been a supporter of the National Infrastructure Bank ever since, and have been working to convince more of my colleagues to get behind the state resolution and get the entire congressional delegation on board. So happy to be here and advocate for it, and we need it now more than ever. So whatever I can do to help.
I completely agree with you. So you represent Worcester?
The counties, it's Middlesex and Worcester, so it's a suburban district, but it includes the counties of Worcester County and Middlesex. So
Okay.
I don't represent the city of Worcester, but it's more suburban communities.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
Okay, we have another speaker who is ready to jump right in. In fact, it's a North Carolina representative, Carolyn Logan. Carolyn represents House District 101, and she is a trailblazer in law enforcement and was the first Black female police officer in Asheville and the first Black female trooper in North Carolina State Highway Patrol. And in the legislature, she focuses on public safety, veteran affairs, and state personnel matters. Thank you for jumping on, Carolyn.
Hi, good evening. Seems like my camera is messed up, but I serve with Representative Rubin, and I'm on the infrastructure bill the resolution that he was speaking of. So I support everything that he was saying. We have a lot of issues here in the state of North Carolina. I was also a regional incident management coordinator for the North Carolina Department of Transportation. So I'm certified in the SHARP 2 training from Federal Highway Administration. We have issues with our roads. As a matter of fact, I was coming from speaking at a basic law enforcement training graduation today and was stuck in traffic on I-85. The queue was over 10 miles with 4 lanes. And, you know, which we know that we can't build our way out of, as I talked about the other day, because we can't grow land and we're going to eventually run out of space of putting lanes, and we have to find another way to move traffic. We never could really see what's causing the backup, but we also know that traffic stops for some reason because something makes it stop. It just doesn't causes backups on its own. So it could have been anything. I never saw the cause of it, but it was just horrific out there on I-85 northbound trying to get through traffic today. So we've got to find a way to move traffic, and looks like mass transportation is going to be one way of doing that. So other than we're trying to get the Silver Line running here in Mecklenburg County, we also need to get regional railroad, I think is a good way to get traffic moving. And we get a regional railroad running back here in North Carolina. And our infrastructure, our bridges are down. We're giving our roads away to private contractors. Lanes, we've lost 1 lane, I-77 north to a private contractor. We've lost it about for 50 years. Same thing's about to happen to I-77 south from downtown to the South Carolina line, because DOT doesn't have the money. It's going to cost billions, and they say they don't have it. So this National Infrastructure Bank, to get it started, would be a good way to get money out there for us to maintain ownership of our roadways and get them in a condition to where we can move our traffic and get the rail we need to move up people across the state, across the country, of what is desperately needed, and hopefully prevent some of these serious incidents that's occurring out here on our nation's highways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn, and we really appreciate you helping to push this. I know this has been a long-term push, but more and more people are jumping on board. We're going to go to our next speaker, Virginia Balu, Ginny is the Western Regional Director of the National Federation of Democratic Women. She and Carolyn Fowler recently sponsored and passed a resolution at the National Federation Conference in support of the National Infrastructure Bank. She's also president of the Idaho Democratic Women's Caucus. So quick question, were you in Chicago last year at the convention? Because
I sure was.
I
That's
remember
blue.
you guys because Idaho was next to North Carolina. I was up there with Don Davis, and I remember
Yes, we
looking
were.
out, and there were these amazing people from Idaho to my right. So small world. So take it away.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm in kind of a unique position in that I'm born and raised in New York at the last express station out of New York City before you transferred on Amtrak to go north. But I've been living out here in a very rural area of Idaho for nearly 50 years. And what we've got going on is 72% of our bridges in the last 10 years have been rated as a D or lower rating. Oh, and a little bit in Worcester with my brother when he went to Clark. So, you know, we've seen a lot of it. And I just got back from driving across the country from here to Louisville to see some family. And Our roads are a mess. And you can tell the difference from a county to next county, and certainly from state to state. In our rural areas, our big problem is those bridges go out. There's no other way in. And you have it on the East Coast in some of your smaller towns and your hill areas. A lot of our mountain roads were done by the CCC. So Idaho is very familiar with public use making our infrastructure. And we need to get that being an okay thing to take. The nonpartisan part really needs to get pushed here, because we do stickers of a blue girl in a red state. And I mean, they give back federal money for childhood education because we don't want that money. Our past city council member, Elaine Clegg, was appointed by Joe Biden, by President Biden, and confirmed as director of the Amtrak board. And she's the CEO of Valley Regional Transit and is really big on getting light rail and Amtrak back into the Northwest. We gave it up 20 years ago, and we never should have. We should have kept that going. So we have, railroads that we are underusing and single car traffic jams like you would not believe. We have towns around Boise that have gained from 9,000 people 15 years ago to 119,000 people today. In 10-year spans, we're seeing cities go that big. And it's, people need a way to get the light rail. We need to take care of those infrastructure in our small communities, or we're never going to be able to get around. So last thing I'd want to say is that we need to get this going and fast, because in our neighboring state, we've got Utah's Representative Lee proposing that Utah be able to have the right to do what they want with public lands, because Utah should be the one to say so. And what his idea is, all that new roads that they've been doing in Salt Lake should be paid by selling off private lands. So we know that the plan is to put it into states' hands so the states can then be shown irresponsible and unable to handle it, so that they could sell it for that profit that all the states needs. This is an answer to prevent any kind of that hijinks saying we need to sell it. Idaho has got the largest amount of public lands in any state, less Alaska. And we know that they're just looking for them. So that's why I'm involved. I'm involved with the Rural Caucus as well as with the Western states. So we need to band together and make sure that there's a smarter way of fixing the needs. So I thank you for letting me be on with your call.
Thank you. Going back to the future is the pathway, because that's really what began building that infrastructure to begin with that the Western states like. Not to mention that, previous administrations, going back to Teddy Roosevelt, actually preserved those lands because developers wanted to develop them the last century, right? We're kind of back there again. So
well, our only little hiccup right now is we've got the guy that's being proposed for a interior secretary position built an illegal runway in our Forest Service lands and got that passed and okayed by friendly judges. And they clear cut a little section of the timber. He paid about $1,200 and built a 14,000 square foot mansion with it. And he's now on the short list to be an interior secretary. So we really need this bill fast, people.
We're with you, and all the work we're doing together I think is going to end up being successful. We just have to keep on keeping on. So our next speaker, David Robinson, are you on the call? I think you are.
I am, Randolph. How's everyone? Thank you for having me. Randolph, we've been on a couple of calls together. Good to see you.
Yes, let me give you a proper introduction, David.
All right.
We're both have Chicago roots. You're the Director of External Affairs at the Manufacturing Renaissance in Chicago. It's a Chicago-based nonprofit which promotes manufacturing policies and the creation of manufacturing jobs, especially in underserved communities. So take it away, David.
Yeah, thank you. Before I get into that, I want to thank all of the elected officials on the call and thank the NIB team. My mother was State Senator Alice Palmer, who ushered in the opportunity for President Barack Obama to have his political career. I grew up in a family of folks that believed in public service, and that's what this work is about. And I don't mean serving the public BS, like sort of what we're seeing, but actually serving the public. And this bill really addresses the needs of our towns, our cities, and Chicago, of course, city of big shoulders. 70% of all manufacturing and industrial activity runs through Chicago and has done so since the turn of the last century. So the from a manufacturing perspective, and I grew up 4 blocks away from the U.S. Southworks steel plant that employed 20,000 people in its heyday, and the community that surrounded it was as healthy as you can imagine. It was like 1950s Hugh Beaumont, and it really everyone worked, everyone could afford a couple of cars, send their kids to school, and then when it shuttered nearly overnight, the social impact and the economic impact of that community and all the others in the city of Chicago that relied on the manufacturing industry to drive economy. When that went away, now we have crime, drugs, all these other kind of things try to fill the vacuum. So this bill will reestablish manufacturing as a driver of economy. I think the estimate is 25 million jobs. And as a person that works in manufacturing and works with manufacturers, 89% of whom are the small to medium-sized companies around the country, Boeing, Ford, all those are the entities that rely on the small manufacturer for them to create their products. So those guys and ladies, they rely on just-in-time delivery. They rely on certain aspects they have to rely on these things, and infrastructure is a huge part of it. And Chicago, and like many of the older cities, has ancient infrastructure that is now at getting to be dangerous, to the point in Chicago, for example, lead pipes. The lead pipe situation is about to be a dangerous health scenario. So we'll be adding more. If we don't address this, we're going to add unintended consequences that we can see coming if we don't build this infrastructure out. My organization, small but mighty little nonprofit, we've been doing advocacy work around smart industry and smart manufacturing for 43 years. We've been training young youth and young adults, get them certified, get them to work in manufacturing. And now we're looking at the green economy, electronic vehicles, and the energy economy about to be the new kind of push in manufacturing. We won't be able to handle the energy needs. We won't be able to handle movement of materials back and forth if we're still doing rural route 1-lane highways for moving material. It can't work. It is unsustainable. This bill will handle that. The state passed a $33 billion capital bill about 4 years ago, and it's only a third of what's needed just for the immediate work in industry. So, and there's no other way to get this. You can't put this on the backs of taxpayers. There's no private sector magic solution. We've got to pass a bill like this. And I'm just here to say that I support it. And thanks for the NIB team giving me a chance to do this. And all you public servants that see things that make sense, I encourage you to continue to advocate for what makes sense. So thank you for my time.
Thank you very much, David. A long time ago, my dad worked at Wisconsin Steel up there, quite familiar with that side of the city. And yes, when Southworks left, it was like a gaping hole, just a disaster. So we're hoping now that we can bring on Assemblywoman Joanne Simon. Joanne, are you able to chat? You might be driving. If you can.
Hi, I'm parking.
You're parking. Okay, we certainly don't want to. I'll read your bio while you get that squared away. Joanne is the chair of the Mental Health Committee of the New York Assembly. She graduated from Iona College with a bachelor's degree in communication sciences. Gallaudet University with a master's degree in education of the deaf, and Fordham University School of Law. After stints as a judicial law secretary and teaching in Hofstra University School of Law's clinical program, she established a disability civil rights firm in downtown Brooklyn. Joanne is a nationally recognized expert in her field, and her work was recently featured in the New York and National Law Journal. So I'm hoping you're parked now or close to it.
No, I'm not.
Okay. Are you ready? Do you
Right.
feel comfortable?
That's okay. It was I'm just going to pull over by a fire hydrant. So
I can keep filibustering.
yeah, that's right. No, that's fine. It's embarrassing you to read all that stuff. So anyway, thank you. I'm kind of in the dark, so I'm not going to turn on my video. But I want to thank all of you for participating tonight, and say that this is one of those issues that is I've been working on at some level as a community leader for many years, because I'm in an area where we have incredible infrastructure needs, from roads and highways to sewer systems to wetland protection and environmental cleanups. And just today I was in another meeting on the Brooklyn Marine Terminal, where the pressure to build housing, because we need housing, is so great, but also they want to build housing on a pier because the housing will offset enough money for them to build out a port, right? And so they've got some money from the federal government for the one port operation underwater, but they need the on top of the water kind of thing. And so we are in the process of potentially planning for housing in an area that is a natural harbor. And you can build housing anywhere, but you can't build a harbor anywhere. And we really need to also have that blue highway on the Hudson River and better utilize that. And that will also create additional jobs. And that infrastructure that we need to do that is the kind of thing we could do with the National Infrastructure Bank. And we would take this pressure off trying to build housing everywhere, because it throws off enough money. And so we don't end up losing half of this harbor location, this maritime location, because we're stuck. We have no other way to pay for it. And so I think, I've seen this happen numerous times, where we make a decision, it's really not a good decision, but it's driven by those dollars that are so hard to get. And the only way we can get those dollars is to do something we know isn't really right for that location. And it's needed elsewhere more than it's needed here. And so that's just a very recent example of these terrible, balancing acts that we all have to do to ensure that we are able to take care of our housing needs as well as our other infrastructure needs. And I hate like heck to see these decisions being made, because we don't have the money to do what we need to do to build out our harbor. And the National Infrastructure Bank, I think, is that answer. And everybody I've talked to about it is very, very encouraged about it and very interested in it. And it's just a matter of getting it off the ground in Congress so that we can actually make it happen. Right now, Congress is a tougher nut to crack than it was even last year. So we have a lot of work to do, and I just want to thank everybody who's in this fight with me, and commit to continuing this fight to get our infrastructure built. So thank you so much, because it'll rebuild our economy, which right now is not looking like it's going to go well.
Well, thank you very much, Assemblywoman. You make a really good point. In the absence of having these other options or tools in the toolbox, it leads elected officials or policymakers to go down pathways they otherwise might not want to go down. We all know about having to make a Hobson's choice, the best choice of the worst options. This getting implemented will allow folks to have better choices to deal with these issues. So, folks, we now have Chairwoman Carlotta Harrell with us. She was elected as the chair of the Henry County, Georgia Board of Commissioners in 2021. Born the daughter of a pastor and a freedom fighter, she grew up watching her parents march and fight for equality alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Congressman John Lewis. We were with you earlier today, so welcome to the call.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you all having me. I'm actually at another event. I stepped out so that I could make sure that I was able to make this call because it's just that important. And so I just want to say good evening to everyone. And as the Henry County Board of Commissioners Chair, I'm a proud Georgian, and I rise in strong support of the proposed $5 trillion National Infrastructure Bank that you all have outlined in House Resolution 4052. You know, why Georgia needs the National Infrastructure Bank. In Georgia, our infrastructure is aging and underfunded. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave our state a C+ overall, with a D+ in transit and D in wastewater. Half of Georgians lack access to public sewer service, with over $2.7 billion in wastewater needs statewide. Atlanta ranks number 6 nationally in traffic congestion, costing drivers over $1,500 annually in lost time and fuel. And our freight corridors are strained, and rural communities are being left behind in broadband and transit access. Along my corridor, along I-75, which is about a 20-mile stretch, Henry County ranks 12th worst in the nation in traffic congestion. So I believe that the National Infrastructure Bank would allow Georgia to modernize its infrastructure at scale without waiting on piecemealing federal grants or burdening local taxpayers. And what it means for Henry County is one of the fastest growing counties in Georgia. And we are a critical logistics hub along the I-75 corridor. We're that midway point from the Savannah port. And so my community is a large logistics and manufacturing community. But with growth comes the pressure. And we face increasing freight congestion, aging roadways, limited transit options. Our stormwater and wastewater systems need to be expanded. We're invested in clean energy and broadband, but funding gaps slow our momentum. And the National Infrastructure Bank would empower counties like ours to finance transformative projects, regional transit, green infrastructure, and resilience in utilities, while creating local jobs and boosting the economic mobility. So I urge my fellow county leaders to support the National Infrastructure Bank resolution, and I advocate for its passage in Congress. This is not just about infrastructure. It's about equality, economic opportunity, and preparing our communities for the future. Let's ensure that counties have the tools to lead boldly. Let's build a stronger, more connected America, starting from the ground up. And so, you know, I support this wholeheartedly. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about Henry County and about the needs of Georgia.
Well, thank you very much, Chairwoman. I think even those that took pass-fail classes know that when you get a D, it's not delightful. D is bad. But I think it's the same in North Carolina. When I've seen those reports, our infrastructure is particularly horrific, you know, across the country. So we have a number of folks on the call, and I think it'd be good if we took some questions and let the speakers get into a dialogue. So those that have questions can use the react button to raise your hand, and we can call on you, and you can get unmuted. So I guess first, okay, Mary Alford, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Chairwoman Carlotta there if she was going to be at the conference in Philadelphia, because I sure hope she comes to the meeting and speaks in support of this bill. I really liked what she had to say.
Absolutely, I am. I'll be there with bells on.
All right. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Excellent. Joe, do you have a question or comment?
I do. A long time ago, John Maynard Keynes, the famous economist, said, whatever we can do, we can afford. And the public banks and infrastructure banks prove that. And they proved it in World War II, of course. But the other side of the coin is the money, of course, is being used to mobilize idle resources and to target high priority production. But you need what monetary experts often say is the real constraint isn't money. You can create money, as your system will do, but the real constraint is the resources, the capital, the physical capital, the machines and so forth, the trained labor. And I wondered, is that a part of your equation? Have you, how do you get enough people to build those houses or to build the ports or build the electrical system or repair or build the infrastructure? Is that part of this equation? Thank you.
Alfecca, I see you're nodding your head. Do you want to weigh in?
I'll give it a first shot, and I'm sure other people can pitch in too, but very much use the history of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, the previous bank, when we had nothing. We had an unskilled workforce that was all out of work, and we had very little capital going, even before mobilizing up for World War II. So what FDR did was to put the people back to work quickly. In the Conservation Corps, he hired them up to, rebuild national parks, to start projects. Within 2 years, he had projects in every single county in the United States. And then he used Civilian Conservation Corps. He would train them at night and build up their skills, and so that they were eventually able to build really complicated projects like the Tennessee Valley Authority, the Colorado River dam systems. These were not easy projects, complicated, and they're still in use today. So that's how well built they were. We can retrain our workforce. Currently, our workforce today is working in service jobs, unskilled, low wage. We need to retrain those people up. We need much more STEM education, and we need much more apprenticeship programs run by unions or run by companies themselves. And this is one of the areas where David Robinson is working to try and get companies to provide these new skills. On the bank side and the financing side, one feature of the bill is to have something which I call a bottleneck clause. If we don't have the inputs to construction that we need from the private sector, then the bank will lend to the private sector to create them. So we can get small businesses up and running to produce all the steel and cement and other inputs, especially the technological inputs that we need to have smart technologies to keep the cost of construction down and the cost of energizing those projects down as well. So altogether, the model is there. We think that there's enough resource. We need to get more concerted planning going on too, so that we can build better transportation systems. That's our biggest, as many of the speakers have pointed out, that's our biggest hurdle, where we need to have, well thought out, planned transportation systems so that we can lower congestion and free up the economy and resources, so we're not sitting in traffic, paying for fuel. So a lot of good planning will come out of the bank as well, and we've seen that a little bit more development planning and good financing, so that you build things properly the first time, is the way to go. The bank can provide that.
Thanks, Alfecca. That was very encouraging.
If I may, on the workforce piece,
Yeah.
just jump
Yes,
on that.
David.
And I'll be really quick. First thing, one of the great abdications when we decided to offshore much of the manufacturing, U.S. manufacturing, was the abandonment of vocational training in public schools. And that process of training in public schools was what fed the war effort during World War II. And after the war effort really built the country through the vocational school system that was supported by government. Government decided to give that away. We need to reconnect all of those dots in order to get young people right in high school. Because if you tell a young person about manufacturing or these sort of jobs, their eyes glaze over, because manufacturing, they were told, was dumb, dark, dirty, and dangerous. And they've not yet learned that we're in a completely different space with STEM, with emerging, robotics and all these things that we need training. And the level of training has to be much more sophisticated. But if government doesn't, as part of this, include that connecting the dots with the city, the community colleges, with incumbent training, with apprenticeships, and very important, introducing and exposing young people to this early, we're not going to be able to fill the need. And the other piece, there is a companion bill that Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, Congressman Danny Davis, Ro Khanna, and others are introducing, that we had a hand in writing, that will really dig in on the workforce structure. It's called the American Manufacturing Renaissance Act. So that bill will help support the other side of what the last speaker spoke about, with what is missing in terms of developing the workforce and bottom up direction of how to get people involved in workforce. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairwoman Harrell, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that those are some of the things that, from the last speaker, those are some of the things that we're already doing right now in Henry County. We have a technical college here in the county, and we work very well with the technical college and the dual enrollment with our public schools, because a lot of our logistics is robotics. And so kids are interested in robotics.
Yep.
It's just how you sell it to them. And so we have dual enrollment in our schools now. So when the kids graduate, they already have certifications in robotics and a lot of these careers that you're talking about. We even have a partnership. We had and I'm sure across the country, there has been a shortage in nurses across the country, especially after the pandemic. And one of the things that we did was our partnership with our hospital here. Our hospital, we have where there's a dual enrollment with the technical college, where when seniors graduate, they already have their LPN in nursing. And so it is all about collaborations. We have a great partnership with our unions and apprenticeship programs. So we're already doing a lot of these things right now, preparing our workforce and keeping up with the trends of, where, far as the different jobs that are coming about as projected by our Atlanta Regional Commission. So, just kind of think about partnerships, collaborations, and utilizing the resources that you currently have now and build upon that. And that will assist you with getting the workforce that you will need to take on a lot of these, as we build out, the infrastructure. And so we have partnerships with a lot of the associations, like the Georgia Utilities Contractors Association. So think about what you have in your community, how you can partner, and how you can leverage that to prepare your workforce.
Thank you, Chairwoman. John Asher, you have your hand up. You can unmute.
Yes, I have a question, and which is related to the gear up we'll have to do soon around getting co-sponsors for the bill. And I'm curious about how, Stu and Alfeco approach this in dealing with Congress. Here is my question, which is that if you go between the Biden and the Trump administration, there's one kind of consistency, which to me is related to the question very directly of infrastructure, which is industrial policy and the question of reshoring. And obviously, I mean, there's one thing discussing all the needs in terms of the states, in terms of what hasn't been kept up in terms of repair. It's a different thing altogether in discussing where we go into the future in terms of how we could actually build the industrial capacity, which to some degree, I would say Democrats and some Republicans tend to agree on. So I'm just wondering to what extent this question of industrial policy, really in the context of the new technologies, which people have already been talking about, robotics, et cetera, but the expansion in terms of new technology, which is kind of an emphasis, even under the crazy political circumstances we live right now, is what we're bringing up when we talk to members of Congress, because we have to also give them not just the kind of bottom-up approach, we have to also start from a kind of a top-down approach of where we're going as a nation and what we have to build to kind of rebuild our competitive edge. And so that's my question. And I'm, by the way, the webmaster for the website, so people know who I am. I actually do a lot of work for the NIB. So, and Alfecca knows me. So, and anyway, Alfecca, you can answer that, but I'd also be curious what David Robinson thinks about that, since he's very much involved in, I think, things related to the what today is called industrial policy. So that's kind of my big question.
Okay, I'll take a crack and then turn it over to David to see what he thinks. But what I noticed from both the Biden and the Trump administration is the industrial policies that they have are a bit shallow. Biden emphasized chip manufacturing. That's good, but he plopped plants into areas that have no infrastructure. We need roads and electricity in those areas to run the plants. And the same for EV stations. It was a little bit of a shallow, technology. The Trump administration wants to reshore manufacturing and technologies with the tariffs, but has no plan for how to actually implement that. He thinks the private sector is going to do it. The private sector is not going to invest right now when you have on again, off again tariffs. So again, too shallow. We definitely need an industrial policy planning organization in government, which is not there right now. China's got a great one. They build 31,000 miles of high-speed rail. They built water grids all over the country. They, move people around. They can manufacturing a doll with a green eyeball in 5 minutes, and they're really eating our lunch on artificial intelligence. Just to do artificial intelligence, to give you an example, we're going to need 100 times, according to one report, 100 times more electric power than we have right now. And the grid is straining. It almost went down. We'll see what it does this summer with the heat. We're not doing the electric power side to plan with the rest of the infrastructure. And if we want to electrify rail, that kind of thing. So we need to do a lot more on the whole policy framework and then roll out, and the bank can finance all of these things. So David, what do you think?
David, if you could give a quick response, and I want to see if we
Only
can get
one
some
thing-
other
only-
reps in here.
Right.
Absolutely. Only one thing to add, and that is that yes, everything's been shallow and everything's been hollow and everything has been kind of all over the board. China doesn't have that problem, right? They've got kind of state-driven policy that helps them identify, based on data and everything else that they need, what is actually required in order to get to the goals of the country. We've yet to figure out what we want, really. That there is debate back and forth about private sector, public sector, what parts and what percentages are going to happen here, and yet at the same time the roads are crumbling. We're not able to get material to market. We have difficulty getting resources, and policies that are coming out of this current administration actually undercut the ability of manufacturers to do the kind of innovation and forward thinking that they need, aside from tariffs. The gutting of the manufacturing, the MEP programs, which are research tied to innovation, tied to investment, all of that stuff is being cut So there's no way that we can actually have coherent policy when you're cutting the foundations of what already exists. So there needs to be agreement. There needs to be a manufacturing czar, for the lack of a better term right here, that really focuses on this, not a department that has just a piece of that. There needs to be real commitment to a coherent industrial policy.
Agreed.
I don't disagree. I think that the workforce issues are enormous, and I do think that, in fact, what we've done at the federal level is shallow. I think one place where the states can step up and do more locally, which I think will inure to the benefit overall of the country, and certainly be an example to the feds when there's a more focused administration. But the National Infrastructure Bank will allow the states to be better able to really focus on that manufacturing aspect and that vocational education aspect and the workforce development as well. Because currently in New York, for example, the clean energy workforce is 2.5 times as large as the fossil fuel workforce. And so with climate, resiliency efforts and the green economy, there is a tremendous opportunity there, and we need to have people ready to take that on.
Well, I just wanted to say that in China, it is their central planning that is the key to their development. They do these 5-year plans, and they have a single party, so they're not arguing with each other all the time in Congress. Catherine Austin Fitts one time said that the difference between our politicians and Chinese politicians is that our politicians are all lawyers who are arguing with each other. Their politicians are engineers and they want to build something. So, yeah, that's it.
That's a key difference. Jenny, you spoke earlier. Would you like to weigh in from Idaho?
Muted here.
You're unmuted now. There you go.
I think it's just so important that we move on this to, in a red state, we need it so much, and finding a way of where we're saying that it's adding to the economy, that we're putting people to work, and finding those common areas, because we all need to have a safe road. And I think it's just so key and vital that we move on this as quick as we can to be showing that solution. I'd be happy to be talking to my Congress people. I talk to them all the time on behalf of the Alzheimer's Association, so I'm pretty fresh in their mind. So I'd be happy to give them a call back and say, hey, what are you doing on this one? Because I've got one on the appropriations, and so we might have some juice there.
Well, thank
you. Let
them
claim the solution. I'm okay with that, as long as we get the job done, right?
As long as we get the job done. I'd like to take a quick answer to Joe, just from 2 major projects in our area. So the CHIPS Act was going to push, that came in Wolf Speed, which is in Chatham County, which was a $9 billion investment. And unfortunately, the new administration pulled the rug out from under them on that. But you were asking about employees. They were able to get a 21st century plant built in a semi-rural area south of Greensboro, west of where I am in Siler City, and they had the workforce. It wasn't the workforce issue. What's undoing them is the industrial policy issue and what's going on with the current administration. And all the roads got widened, the thing got built, and they have workers. Same with Toyota, which built a gigantic plant north of me. The plant got built and Toyota has workers. The big question is what's going to happen with our policy. And VinFast also was coming in here, but their issue is they're an EV manufacturer that really wasn't at the top of the line, and North Carolina brought them in. Again, all the construction is done. And so a lot of this infrastructure stuff can be done because we have people that can do it, and you don't outsource it. It doesn't get outsourced. So Gregory Foreman, you got your hand up. And just unmute yourself, and if you have a question or a comment.
You asked the question about if you had anyone in labor.
Yes.
Call. I am in labor. I have partners that are in construction, and we are trying to create some partnerships with renewable energy storage. So we want to create that workforce. So definitely a part of labor.
Excellent. That's what we're pushing, why we push this resolution. Carolyn Logan, our representative, if you'd like to comment again, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Just want to say you were talking about the CHIPS Act. And although I don't know anything much about chips, but I got together with Commerce and we submitted a bill for funding, and we submitted a bill to start a task force for chips. Commerce fully supported it. But, you know, it's going back to a lot of what we've been talking about, that how both sides will not work together. The UNC Charlotte was behind it, full support, and they would not pass those two bills. So we'll try it again. But when you brought that up, you know, because that was just something I wanted to get, you know, something I want to get involved in, aside from me being so much involved in law enforcement. And the chips I was told about chips. So they just would not discuss those two bills, and it did not go anywhere. I just thought I'd let you know that we tried to do something with it.
I'm aware, exactly. They're blocking it. Mary Alford, if you're on.
I'm still here.
Okay, do you want to say anything?
I wanted to echo everything Alfeka said. It's hard to follow her because she can just rattle off all of the data and all of the things that we need to pay attention to. But I really appreciate the discussions of clean energy, and I appreciate the discussions of upgrading the power with a background in power plants. It's, you know, it's the grid is there's so much that we could do that would upgrade the way that we send our power around to make it so much more efficient and so much more. We could save so much energy if we could push our power around in upgraded lines. So we talk about needing more power, but we could address a whole, like 20% of those power needs just by upgrading the way that we move our power around. So I just wanted to make sure that we made that point.
It's funny you mentioned that. I used to be on the board of Advanced Energy and work with Progress and Duke a lot. And there is an issue that most Americans don't know about with the power being dirty and it getting out of sync with the sine wave and how you can clean it up. You are 100% correct. There is technology to clean up the power, but that's another like 3-hour conversation on that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We have LB is what you are. So you are worthy. If you want to go ahead and ask a question or weigh in.
Thank you so much. I apologize. I only caught the end of your conversation, so I'm not going to ask questions that were already probably addressed. But I want you to know that I'm here in Michigan. My bandwidth for volunteer work is kind of burnt out because I worked on both Marianne Williamson campaigns as a head in Michigan. And what I would love to do, because the more I listen to you, the more I come to your calls, the more I see your information, the more I want to find some space for me to support what you're doing. So you got my email and you have my information. I'll send you my resume so you can see kind of what you could use me for. But I just want to know how I can help. And is there some initiative you have in Michigan that you would like me to introduce to the people here? I'm just a helper. That's all I am. And I wanted you guys to know that. I don't come every week, but you stay on my mind and you stay in my consciousness as a solution that this country needs.
Well, we really appreciate you weighing in. And, you know, I come from a percussionist background. So I got the lead singers, guitar players, everyone else. There's plenty of room in this band to get up here and make sweet music. I'm just here trying to set a rhythm, working with everyone else. So you are invited. Let's get on stage and make this happen.
That's
Anyone
beautiful.
else? All right. Anyone else have any comments or questions or concerns? If If not, we can probably review. I think we have a lot of support. Oh, a resolution is going to be going into the Michigan legislature in the next couple weeks. We're going to go to some slides. Our friend from Michigan, you definitely could help us with that. So we're just going to roll through this quickly so you guys can see. We got an op-ed that was published in the LA Times, and it cites the National Infrastructure Bank. This is, you know, pretty cool. It's something also in the Las Vegas Tribune Journal. Again, Alfeca and Don Siefkas got that published. National Federation of Democratic Women, they passed this resolution on June 9th. And all of these, you guys, again, this is what from ours, the Labor Caucus in North Carolina. And this is actually going to the North Carolina Democratic Party on the 28th. And it was recommended for approval by their platform committee and resolution committee. This one will be National Association of Counties. I think this is going to be really important. And for our county commissioner friends on here tonight, this is going to be important to push through. And then, of course, we have something in the chat. Yes, this is how the TVA was originally financed, Ivan. I mean, really, we're going back to the future. If you look at the history of this country and you read some pretty impressive books about it, you're going to find out most of what we took for granted in the post-war period was built by the infrastructure bank. And it tapped out in the 1950s under Eisenhower. But what we're familiar with in our lifetimes was done by the infrastructure bank. Yes, TVA, rural electrification, all of these things we take for granted. So one of the important things, with ActionPage, we're pushing, obviously we're going to be getting a new bill introduced to Congress. It's in bill writing right now, and it's going to come on, and we're going to want to be recruiting sponsors. Last year we had 48. This year we need to increase the number. If we take the House back in 2026, I think, or the House changes, I think it will end up passing. But perhaps this time it could as well. And it's important that we contact our legislators, our congressional members in each of our states and say, sign on to this bill. Then thanks, Joanne. Thanks for speaking tonight. It was great to hear from you. And we've got flyers that you can circulate, you can download and print out. And of course, none of this is done without a little bit of money. I've been able to prevail upon a nonprofit that I founded and work with to help support the effort. And I've only been at this now since last August, having met the guys up in Chicago, met the team. But if I can, anything you can do helps, because the next big thing is to make a showing at the Association of County Commissioners Conference. And then, if we have a little more money in the till, then folks can actually get to other places. I personally witnessed the magic of Stu and Angela because I was up for a National Association of Realtors meeting in DC, and they met me up there, and they're just amazing, talking to people on the fly and actually convincing them, evangelizing for infrastructure. So please, if you can, make a contribution to what works for your budget. Donate today. And I don't know if there's any other comments or concerns. We, of course, have these calls every month, but I really appreciate everyone getting on this evening and joining in with us.
Can I ask something real quick? Can I make a quick ask?
Sure, you can make a quick ask. Who is asking?
One thing that would be super helpful for maybe somebody younger on the call that's really good at graphics.
Oh, Mary. Okay, Mary. I just didn't.
Yeah, this is Mary Alford. As one thing that would be really great to take to our meeting in Philadelphia would be an infographic. A lot of county commissioners, they don't have a lot of time to read a big thing, but you can do a lot with an infographic, and you can convey a lot of information very quickly. And we've got a lot of policy wonks on here that like to use a lot of words, but we need to be able to convey this message in a one-page quick format that is that catches people's eyes. So I want to put the ask out there that if anybody's got talent or knows anybody that can do that kind of work, that would be really helpful.
Well, my wife's been a graphic designer for 40 years and started with album covers and books. I could ask her. Of course, she's doing it for free, but I'm gonna have to go ask her. But anyone, yeah, the infographics are really important. I have nieces and nephews, and I've asked them if they would like to be influencers and stand in front of a factory, and I've yet to get a positive response, but hopefully I will. They'd rather stand in front of the Eiffel Tower or whatever else. But yes, I agree, Mary. How the information is conveyed is super important, so that folks can kind of grasp it instantly and utilize it and say, okay, I get it. Because really, there's nothing not to get here. It's not increasing the debt. It's not increasing the deficit. It's a methodology that we can actually address real problems and put money in our communities. I don't really understand why it should be resisted, but I do know from being in politics, it seems like good ideas take forever to push up and bad ideas get stoved to the top. But this is a good idea. It's just going to take the work to get it done.